One of the most spectacular things that happened while I was away was the creation of Jackson's box. I want to thank Jackson Foster for this wonderful creation. Jackson asked me if it was okay to ask questions in church. I said St. Luke's is a question church. We're not all that keen on answers. We just keep asking all the questions. Now, you may have noticed that we're in a process of rethinking worship. The flow and the energy and the components and the way in which we come together into the presence of God. And so I want Jackson's box not only to be for the questions that you have, but the feedback that you want to give. Yes, worship team, this was spectacular. The presence of God was palpable. Or, I'm not sure I wanted to get up and write with a pencil about what if. But someone loved it. We're trying to respond to the diversity that is this community. And so we'll look for your feedback. Jackson's box, questions, and feedback. Well, you've been in the living room for 5 weeks, and then last week the dining room for the feeding of the 5,000, and I heard that if I didn't get back in time, we were all moving to the bathroom. But now we have moved to the cafe where people all over the world come together to tell their stories and are changed by that conversation. Stories abound, and cafes abound in Spain. Every neighborhood has a paseo, a pedestrian street lined with cafes, usually sitting in the shadow of a spectacular cathedral. The Barcelona Cathedral anchors the old city. Bob and I found our way back to favorite cafes by glimpsing its spires over the tops of the buildings on those winding streets. What we loved about the cafes in Spain is that they opened early and closed late. So at any time during the day, you could pop in and have a cup of espresso or café con leche and a baguette at any time of the day. You see, Bob and I were visiting his brother, who lives in Barcelona, on my renewal leave. And Stephen tried very hard for the 2 weeks to get us to adopt the Spanish schedule. Breakfast early in the morning, second breakfast around 11, lunch around 3, a snack after siesta about 6:30, and then dinner at 9. I think I stayed hungry most of the time I was there because I never quite got it right. Lunch is the biggest meal of the day, served in the cafes and the restaurants between 1 p.m. and 4 o'clock p.m. with 2 courses, dessert, bread, and a drink, coffee, beer, or wine. This is a good place. Yes, but the bars don't even open until 8:30 p.m. And then they go until dawn. My brother-in-law, Stephen, has a favorite bar on every street in Spain. Bob and I are convinced that we saw them all. The bars are crowded, standing room only. Fish, clams, and shrimp from the Mediterranean are the favorite tapas, little plates that you share with one another. I particularly enjoyed the boquerones, little fried sardine-like critters. And then when your hands are all greasy and you use these little thin paper napkins, you kind of wad them up and they're all greasy, and then you just throw them on the floor. Welcome to Spain. Well, stories abound in these energetic meeting houses, and the language barriers just dissolve. Now, I like to travel with Rick Steves. He's my favorite travel guide writer. He invites me to travel as a temporary local. And he gives me advice about what he calls touristy cliches. So I was eager to take his advice when we arrived in Sevilla, flamboyant Sevilla, where bullfighting is still politically correct, and every little girl dreams of growing up to be a flamenco dancer. Sevilla has soul. Well, our waiter at dinner that night not only told us about the Cafe Matthias, but also said that after the glitzy tourist shows are over, very expensive tourist cliches, the flamenco dancers and musicians will put on their blue jeans and then hang out at the local bars. And you know his line, something might happen. Well, Rick Steves actually writes about it in his book. I get it right side up here. He finds Sevilla. I marked that page. Okay, Granada, Sevilla. There it is. No, it's not. Oh, this was so good. I want to read it. Madrid, I didn't go there. There it is. Impromptu flamenco in bars. Spirited flamenco singing still erupts spontaneously in bars throughout the old town after midnight. Head across the river to Triana and just follow your ears. And then he gives you the names of several bars. Well, by asking around the streets, Stephen found out the name and the placement of one of these bars. So late that night, we made our way through the winding streets of Triana and came upon this very barren, dark street corner. There were two young students standing there in the dark, staring at this locked building with no name and holding Rick Steves. She saw my book and she said, maybe he's wrong. I said, never, never. And when we returned at midnight, the place was simply bustling with people, crowded, people elbowing their way to get in. There were guitars and drum boxes. It was like musical chairs as artist after artist after artist joined in the playing. Exquisite. We think this bar was family owned because Mama acted like she owned the place. She was shriveled and thin, cheeky, and irreverent. With this kind of gravelly voice, she would sing song after song of the flamencan culture that would make the Spanish audience just roll with laughter. Well, she went over to the side and pulled this young woman out of the audience. We think it was a granddaughter who she wanted to dance. And like an African American congregation that knows the preacher is faltering and yells, "Help the preacher, Lord, help the preacher," Mama began to heckle her own granddaughter. "Try harder, honey. Dig deeper, sweetheart. Dance, honey, dance." And there were 4 verses to each set, and you could tell that the girl was embarrassed. She didn't have her hands right. An older man stepped up and tried to partner her, and she tripped over herself. She was just embarrassed. And the heckling just grew from the congregation, and I heard for her. Well, she suddenly dug deep and came out with this amazing dance. She all of a sudden forgot that all of us were there. And the heckling ended, and a silence fell over the room, And when she struck this amazing final pose, throwing her head back and almost bending all the way back, I thought the man was going to drop her. There was this moment of silence as the room let out this collective breath and then erupted with "Ole! Ole! Ole!" Mama kissed both of the partners. I looked at Stephen. "El Duende," he mouthed. I nodded. Our dinner waiter had been correct. Something had indeed happened. My brother-in-law is a classical guitarist. He and his wife, Yumi, have lived in Barcelona for 7 years. Prior to Barcelona, they lived in Granada, in southern Spain, in the region of Andalusia, not far from Sevilla. And while we visited Granada, Stephen wanted to stop in and see his guitar maker. He wanted to order a new guitar, and he knew the process could take up to 2 years. So Antonio Montero is a world-renowned guitar craftsman. His dusty little shop is on this nondescript street corner. And while Stephen made introductions, I noticed photos on the bulletin board of numerous guitarists with their guitars, interspersed with pictures of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I love that because the Catholic devotion around the Sacred Heart of Jesus is that this is the way that Jesus expresses his love for all people. Well, while Antonio finished a telephone call, Stephen took us on a tour of the shop. Pepe works here in a shop about knee-deep with sweet-smelling wood shavings. Beautiful. Now 81 years old, on the left, Antonio learned his craft at the age of 13 as a cabinet maker in the family business. "Does Antonio play?" I asked Stephen. And he said, "Oh no, he doesn't play. He listens. He listens to his artists. The wood is very important, and he builds the guitar to match my musical style. He knows me, and he knows wood. That's his skill." Well, all of the other shop workers, about 5 or 6 of them, had then gathered in this main room, and you could tell there was something about to happen. And Antonio reached under the counter and got out a pack of cigarettes. Uh-oh. And he began to pass them out to everyone. Asked Bob if he wanted one, asked me if I wanted one. And so Stephen leans down and said, "Now, I don't smoke, but I have to this time. It's a ritual." And they all lit up. And Bob and I watched and coughed and watched and coughed as Duende seeped through that room. You know, in the New Testament, Paul writes and founds, he's the founding missionary to all of those churches around the Mediterranean region. And in his letters to them, he writes about connections. He encourages everyone to live in partnership with God and with each other. He says, "Bear with one another in love. Do all that you can to preserve the unity of the Spirit that binds you together. There is one God of all, over all, through all, and within all, and each one of us has been given a share of this grace." You know, this is amazing good news. When we profess this one God, we begin to see that there really is one pattern, one center, one source, one grace, and that it is at its heart a very coherent world. We are bound together. One of the joys of my renewal leave was time in extended prayer, especially in my solo days on the beach in Florida. There's a new kind of knowing that kind of settles into the bones when you present yourself quietly to all creation. The sunsets over the Gulf, the sounds of the shore birds and those colonies, the lapping of the ocean against the shore, the powdery quartz sand, the laughing of the diverse families, in and out, affecting prayer and all of life. And in prayer, the message that kept coming back to me over and over again was this simple statement: Janet, your life is not about you. You are about life. You are about Duende. I learned that I am more a we than I am an I. So our stories matter because they open us more fully to this kind of knowing and being together. Our storied lives become living letters written on our hearts, known and read by everyone who knows us. Well, the next photo is a living letter that I want to celebrate with you who have sustained my brother in prayer. If you have never seen a hospital room, it may be a bit unnerving, but to me, this is the most beautiful sight in the world. I was so attuned to Duende that I simply let it wash over me when I received this message at about 11:45 p.m. in Barcelona on Sunday evening, September the 28th. It read, "Got the call at Beth Israel. Deb will email you if it happens. God bless us, everyone." So I wrote back, "Team Barcelona is in prayer and Duende for you. And as I understand the notion, it means connection and gratitude. Those moments when life is greater than life, when life is larger than life, and this is certainly one of those moments." My brother got a cardiomyopathy 20 years ago. It's the same virus that Natalie and Olivia Murrow have fought all their lives. 8 years ago, he got on the transplant list. 15 months ago, he was with a mechanical assist device, and his days were running out. My brother is now blessed with the gift of a new heart. And this picture that he posted on Facebook says, "My heart to all of your hearts, because you have sustained us in prayer all these years." He hugs that big blue heart when he coughs. Joe's friends have started this I Heart Joe Forbes art challenge on Facebook to give him courage and all the ways that they're seeing finding and creating hearts both in nature and in their own creativity. This project grew out of a revelation that happened to him in the first few days after the surgery at Beth Israel Medical Center in Newark, New Jersey. Since my brother had been living on an LVAD, a left ventricular assist device, he had been used to the swooshing sound of that machine. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. But with a new heart, he woke to the unnerving beat and the deafening rhythm of a pulse. He said, "It is so loud. I'm not used to it." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you think he hears it too? The donor, I mean. Do you think he hears it?" Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. E. E. Cummings writes about Duende this way. Here is the deepest secret that nobody knows. Here is the root of the root and the bud of the bud and the sky of the tree of life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that is keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. Thanks be to God.